So in today's video, I'm going to go over the things that you want to wear in the mountains, and that's going to determine if you have a good day in the mountains and want to go back to having a rubbish day in the mountains and then never wanting to go back. So we need to cut to an intro because I am overheating in this stupid outfit. So here's the intro. So welcome back, and in today's video what I want to cover are the things that you want to try and wear to give you a better day in the mountains to avoid, which could potentially give you not such a good day and then not want to go back. So what I'm going to do is start from the ground up. So let's start with footwear. Something I highly recommend avoiding, and unfortunately you do see people wearing sandals or pumps or just general day-to-day footwear. They're not going to give you the protection that you need. So what you can do with these basically is just throw them away, and please do not wear them up the mountains. They are not going to give you the protection you need, and if you go over on your ankle, you potentially could break your ankle. So let's take a look at the boots that I do recommend. So what I'm going to do is try and explain where you can cut costs and when you can't cut costs, and I strongly advise not cutting costs on your boots, because this is the difference between going back to the mountains or potentially breaking your ankle. So a cheap pair of hiking boots aren't going to give you the ankle support that you need. They're not going to be waterproof, so once your feet become wet, your socks will hold the moisture, and eventually if you spend long enough during that day in the mountains, your feet are going to become sore, and potentially the skin, once it becomes that wet, can literally just slide off your feet, and then you're in a lot more trouble because you just can't walk on that area because it's so sore. So you really don't want to skimp on your boots, and a good quality boot is going to give you the ankle support that you need. It's going to be waterproof, so if you're walking through boggy water or anything like that, it's going to keep your feet dry, and also the sole is going to be hard. A cheaper boot isn't going to have so much of a good sole, so you're going to be feeling all the rocks underneath, and again your feet are going to become really sore, and you're not going to have a good day in the mountains. Whereas a good boot like this is going to allow you to be a lot more comfortable when walking on the rocks. So socks, you get normal socks from day to day, and then you get hiking socks. I'd recommend just buying a hiking sock. They just help absorb the moisture away from your feet a little bit better. You get different levels of socks, so you can get a lighter, medium and heavy. So depending on what you're doing, depending on how long you're spending or what the temperature is, you can get a different quality of sock. What you can also get is an undersock. So you put this one on, which is a lot tighter, and then you have a normal hiking sock. This one's just going to try and help, again, remove the moisture. It's going to keep your feet a little bit warmer and try and prevent you getting blisters. So just recommend, just if you can, try and get a good pair of hiking socks. Gaiters, you're not always going to need gaiters. It depends where you're going. If the ground is very muddy, they can really help keep your trousers dry. If you're in like more of a moorland, you're walking through boggy grass, they're going to keep your boots and trousers dry. Something to think about when you're purchasing your gaiters is I would highly recommend Gore-Tex. These are going to stay a lot drier, and they're going to allow your legs to breathe. Wearing a non-Gore-Tex pair, your legs are going to become very sweaty, so you're almost like no point wearing them because your legs are going to become sweaty, whereas these are going to let your legs breathe a little bit better. And if you fit these properly, you can actually wade through water and not have the water go in, whereas if you didn't put them on properly, then you're going to have problems with the water getting in. So definitely recommend getting a Gore-Tex pair of gaiters. So what to wear on your legs when hiking is an absolute no-no are a pair of jeans and sweatpants or tracksuit bottoms. Jeans are going to give you absolutely no weather protection whatsoever. The wind, if it's whipping across the mountain, is just going to cut into these, and they're going to hold the cold, and if they get wet, they're just never going to dry throughout that walk, and they're going to become very heavy. So please, and unfortunately you do see it, don't wear jeans in the mountains. And again, with tracksuit bottoms or sweatpants, yes, they move very well and they are quite freely and they're used for exercise, but I highly recommend not wearing them in the mountains, because once these become wet, they're going to become very heavy and they're going to give you no protection from the weather whatsoever. So again, just put these with your no-par, just keep them for the gym or running, and don't wear them in the mountains. Something I do recommend is a proper pair of hiking trousers. This is where you can slightly cut corners. In some shops you can spend up to £150 for a pair of trousers, whereas I personally don't see the point. These are just a Decathlon, these are around £30 and they're very good. I have absolutely no issues cutting costs on these. However, something that I do want to look for, I want pockets of course to put food in or just accessories and things like that. But something that I want my trousers to be able to do are to be flexible. So if I'm hiking and I'm climbing up over rocks or descending and things like that, it's just going to allow my legs to move a lot more freer than a material that's not as freely given, whereas these are really flexible and they're very good. So I personally don't pay the top price for my hiking trousers. I will cut corners on those, so definitely recommend a good flexible pair of hiking trousers. And also they're really thin, so if these ones get wet they're going to dry a lot quicker, whereas jeans and tracksuit bottoms, they're never going to dry on that hike. So here in the UK it can get very wet in the hills or in the mountains, so I highly recommend carrying a pair of waterproof trousers and obviously a jacket, which I will cover. And again, this is where I would not cut corners. I have cut corners and I've become wet. It soaks into your trousers, down your trousers, into your socks, and then again, that whole thing with getting your feet wet and sore. So these ones are Gore-Tex, they are not cheap. You're looking around for a set of trousers and a jacket. For a good set of Gore-Tex, you're looking around £500–600. And I know that's a lot of money, but if you're going to spend a lot of time in the mountains, I highly recommend going Gore-Tex, because the actual material itself is waterproof, whereas some trousers and jackets, they actually apply a waterproofing and then over time that can come off, and they're just not going to be as good as a Gore-Tex pair in my opinion. Something to think about when purchasing your Gore-Tex trousers or just general waterproof trousers is, can I put them on when I have my hiking boots on? So it starts raining, I don't want to have to take my hiking boot off to get my waterproof trousers on. It's more time that I'm stood still, I could potentially get cold, then the rain's then going to get into my boots, my socks might get wet. Whereas these ones, I can put them on, I can just put my leg through and I can put them on while still wearing my boots. And also if it then stops raining and the temperature picks up, sometimes it can be a little bit annoying having waterproof trousers on because your legs can feel a little bit sweaty, whereas these are great because they have a full zip down the side, so I can just open that up and it then allows my legs to breathe. So that's just something to think about when purchasing your over trousers. So when I'm hiking in the mountains, I like to layer up on my top half, so I like to wear very thin light layers and then I can layer them up, so if I start to become hot I can start to take them off and I can control my body temperature a little bit better. Whereas if I wear something big and bulky, then as soon as I've taken that off, I've let a lot of heat out, so then I could end up being too cold, so then I could put that big layer back on, and then I could be too hot. So I'm then stuck in between either being too hot or too cold, whereas if you layer up, you then can slowly take the layers off and then you can put them back on and you can just balance your temperature a little bit better. So what I like to do if it's going to be cold or if it's wintry, I like to wear a tight fitted long base layer. This is just going to protect my arms. If I've got this on, it's going to keep the wind from biting into my skin. So I like to wear that with a proper sweat t-shirt. This is like a hiking gym sort of t-shirt. This is designed for sweat. It's very thin. It's going to dry a lot quicker than what a normal t-shirt would. I would highly recommend not wearing a day-to-day t-shirt. Once these become wet and sweaty, it's going to take a lot longer to dry than something like this would. So I like to wear those, and generally when I'm pushing up the mountain, that's probably all I would wear. Unless it was really cold, then I would put a different base layer on. So what I like to do if my base layers aren't keeping me warm, then I will add layers. So something that you want to avoid doing is wearing like a hooded top or a sweat top or a tracksuit top, something like that. Again, this is heavy. It's not going to dry out if it gets wet, and then it's bulky as well. So trying to stuff this into my bag is going to be a lot bulkier, and I just wouldn't advise, so I would put this with your no pile. So the sort of things that I would wear are things like this. So all of my layers are very thin, very lightweight, and they scrunch up into absolutely nothing. And these sort of areas you can cut corners. You don't need to pay high end for the expensive brands. You can cut corners on these sort of things. So again, this is very thin, very lightweight, and if the wind's whipping across the mountain but it's not that cold, if I put this on, by just having an extra layer over my skin, it's going to stop the wind from biting in, but it's not going to allow me to get too hot. So this is a very good top, and again folds up and fits into your bag very well. And again, this one is more of a very, very thin jacket. This jacket slash top is very good. Highly recommend this top. It has a hood. Some people like hoods, other people don't like hoods. I like a hood because I can just throw it up and it can keep my neck and ears warm. This is very lightweight, and again, it scrunches up into absolutely nothing. And if it starts to rain very lightly, this is actually water repellent, so it's not waterproof. It's going to keep me somewhat dry if I'm unsure of whether it's actually going to rain or not. This will actually keep me somewhat dry. And I love this jacket. It's very new and it's very, very good, and it weren't that expensive too. So when I'm ascending, if it's really cold, or more so when I'm coming down the mountain, that's then when I want to put my insulated jacket on. And for me, this is my insulated jacket. In the UK, again, it can be quite wet, so I would recommend keeping away from down. The down jackets are becoming better, and the problem what you can have with down is once it becomes wet, it's not going to keep you warm, because the loft of the feathers is what keeps you warm, whereas when they become wet, they just become like flat and sticky, and they can then create gaps in the jacket, which isn't going to keep you warm. Whereas this one is a synthetic jacket. This one is heavier, and it's not going to pack down as well as a down jacket. However, I would rather sacrifice that by staying warm and dry over a down jacket. So this one is synthetic, it's a man-made material, and this one is also wool. You can pay less for a synthetic jacket, but you're not going to get the waterproofing and maybe the wool and the quality of a more expensive one. This is somewhere I wouldn't cut corners on my insulated jacket. Again, not an overly cheap jacket, but definitely recommend paying a little bit more for your insulated jacket. I have actually given my waterproof jacket away on a hike because theirs weren't keeping them dry, and I've actually descended down the mountain when it's been raining, and this one has kept me warm and dry. And again, personally, I would recommend for my insulated jacket to have a hood. It makes a big difference just allowing to get that hood up to keeping you warm or not, and again, it stops that wind from whipping across the back of your head and making you cold. So definitely recommend synthetic in the UK, whereas somewhere that's drier you could get away with a down jacket. So again, in the UK it can get quite wet into the mountains, so waterproof jackets, again, you do not want to cut corners on your waterproof clothing, because again, if it hammers it down of rain and you start to get wet, it's going to be miserable, you're going to get cold, and you're not going to have a good day. So this one is a Gore-Tex. It's a higher end Gore-Tex. This jacket was not cheap. You can pay and get a lower quality Gore-Tex, or you can buy just a non-Gore-Tex jacket that has waterproofing applied to it, but my opinion, I would pay for a higher quality, the best that I can afford, and it's going to keep you dry. Again, it's got its hood, and this one is Gore-Tex, so I'm not going to get wet while wearing it, and again, it's going to allow me to breathe a little bit better than maybe a non-Gore-Tex one would. So something just to think about when purchasing your waterproof jacket is some of them come with the underarm zips, so it might be raining but not that cold. So you want to air yourselves a little bit more, so you can undo the zips here, and that's just going to allow just to circulate the air a little bit better if it's warm but wet. So definitely recommend not cutting corners on your waterproofing. And lastly, hats and gloves and neck buff. So when you go to a shop, you can see a general woolly hat. That's what this one is. So what you can find is when you're pushing up the mountain, you start to heat up, and then you want to take your woolly hat off. And again, like I've mentioned, the wind can whip across the mountain, and if it's hitting your skin, even though you're warm yourself, even though it's hitting your skin, it can actually bite in and it can actually hurt and it stings your skin. So this one is actually not that good because it's too thick. So as I start to warm up, this one is too much and I start to sweat, so then I have to take it off, and then I have that issue of the wind cutting in to my skin. Whereas something like this one is very, very thin. It's going to dry very easily, and what this one allows me to do, it allows me to keep it on my head while I'm ascending the mountain, and it's going to keep my head warm, but I'm not going to overheat while I'm wearing it. So this one is very good because it's very thin. And then what I can do is I'll take this one also, and then when I start to descend the mountain, I'll put this one on. That's going to keep me nice and warm, and it's just a little bit better to wear on the descent. So if you go into an outdoor shop or a hiking shop, you're going to see a variety of gloves, and something I again would recommend is getting a very thin layered glove like this one. And this one is actually a woman's glove, and I wear these and they're very good. I can put them on their own. Again, if that wind's whipping across, just having a very thin layer is going to keep that wind from biting into my skin. And then I can put them on and I can put a bigger over glove on. But these I would highly recommend, because generally when you're ascending, your body's going to get warm, and all you want is just to stop that wind from biting into your skin. And then again, like I said, you can then have a different glove. This one is a more substantial glove. It's going to keep your hands a little bit warmer in maybe winter, or if the temperatures are a lot colder. These ones are sealskins, and I do recommend keeping away from sealskin. I'm sorry, they are rubbish. They do not keep your hands dry, and I've never had any luck with sealskins. They keep my hands warm, but they don't keep my hands dry, so I would advise keeping away from sealskins. So the glove I showed you there was individual fingers, whereas this one is a mitten. So these ones are potentially going to keep your hands a little bit warmer, because each finger is going to keep the other one a little bit warmer. These are great if you don't really need to be using your hands that much, because if you are climbing or you've got poles, these might be a little bit more awkward because your fingers are all together and you're not going to be able to grip things as well. I haven't really tested these ones out in the wet. They keep my hands nice and warm, but in terms of wetness, I'm not 100% sure, so I've still yet to test these ones out. Slightly different kind of glove. This one is a decathlon glove, and I've wore these in a cold wind, and they have kept my hands warm. I wouldn't recommend a glove like this. This is like I don't actually know, I don't think it's leather because they weren't that expensive, but it's like a leather sort of glove. I don't think they would keep my hands dry. They're not recommended for that. And what's probably good about these is if I've got hands on the rocks, or if I'm using poles or maybe an ice axe, these are actually real good because they're hard wearing. So not that expensive, but so far I'm quite happy with these. They've kept my hands nice and warm, and these are actually quite good because if you're doing something, you can hook it round, saves them. If the wind again is whipping, it can actually blow things away, so you don't want to be putting things on the floor. So these are actually quite good to keep your gear safe. And lastly, a neck buff. So I did mention on insulated jackets you can have a hood or no hood. Some people don't like hoods, and then what they do is they'll put this on and then they'll put it up over the head, which gives the similar effect of having a hood. And again, you can just wear it as a normal neck buff, and you can have it up over your face. Again, I know I keep saying it, if that wind's whipping across and the wind's cutting into your skin, just having a very thin layer like this makes the difference between your skin hurting and not hurting by having something like that. And also these, they screw up into absolutely nothing. So you can, if it's really hot, you can wipe yourself off if you're getting sweat in your eyes, or again, they fold up to nothing. So you might as well have one of these. They work as a hat and things like that. So I hope you guys found some value from today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. If there's anything I missed or anything else that you'd like to know, comment below and I'll get back to you there. And guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.